Can you leave once?
Yeah, এবাৰ এটো হেৰি কৰি দিয়া ভিডিওটো হেৰি কৰি দিয়া
আমি এতিয়া ইউটিউবত লাইভ আছো হা
বহি লোৱা
এনেকে আহি আছে নেকি
বহিবা বহা প্ৰবালিকাৰ পিকচাৰটোহে আহি আছে মানে ষ্টিল ফটোটো আহি আছে
শুনা পাইছনে মই কৈছো
অলপতে কাম কৰিছে কি হ'ল তোমাৰ
আজি প্ৰবলেমে কি আছে
নিউকে পিটিক পটাক কৰিছে সেইকাৰণে হৈছে ইনি নহয়
ভিডিওটো চোৱাচোন এবাৰ
বাটো
এনেকে আহি আছে ন
বাটো
আমরা চাব লাগিব মই নাজানো এইবোৰ মই কেতিয়া ইউজ কৰা নাই
বাটো শুনা পাইছনে
মই শুনা পাইছো
শুনিছো মই
অকমান কমকে শুনিছো
মই হে কৰিছো মানে ইউটিউবত লাইভ দিয়া আছে বৰ্তমান
কোনো কথা ক'ব নালাগে
ছাৰৰ মাইনা
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
মাইনা ভালে আছা তুমি মমিতা
ma'am, ভালে আছো মই আপুনি ভালে
ঠিক আছে ভাল লাগিছে
বাটো
Am I audible? Yes. Aji ki problem is I don't know. The video to ulal na tumar. Aise ho boliya. Acha aise na. ठीक है. Moi rohulong mati anislu ma. ठीक है. Aji ki problem? এতিয়া হৈছে দিয়া ভাল হৈছে Good afternoon, sir. I hope আজি ভালে ভালে যায় ইমান ডিস্টারবেন্স হয়েছিল না আজি নে হেয়া মোৰ ভিডিওটো গুছি যায়
আমি মানে ৰিসোর্স পাৰ্সনৰ কাৰণে ৰৈ আছো অকণমান মানে কানেক্ট কৰি আছে
okay no problem
ওকে কলিতা স্যার আহিছে এতিয়া ৰিসোর্স পাৰ্সন আহিছে
আচ্ছা
ঠিক আছে
লিংকটো খুলি দিয়ে ভাল নেকি বহুত ৰেডি হৈ আছে তো
মই দিলো গ্ৰুপত দি দিলো
আচ্ছা ঠিক
অলৰেডি স্যাৰ জয়েন হৈছে
দেখিছো কৰিছো আৰু দুইজন আহক আহিছে Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone.
গ্ৰুপত দি দিছো লিংকটো তেওঁলোকে এটা মানে কৰি আছে
Good afternoon, sir.
Only 10 participants. Yeah, good afternoon.
Good to see you.
There are only 10 participants.
আৰু আহি কৰি আছো তোমাৰ এজনক খবৰ লওঁ মানে পাৰিছে নে নাই বিকাশ মোৰ এজনে মোক ফোন কৰি আছিল মই এতিয়া ফোন কৰিলে মোৰতো বন্ধ হৈ যাব নেকি
মই গ্ৰুপত দি দিছো বাইদেউ
Yeah, they are joining now.
Start কৰিব পাৰি জয়েন হৈ আছে মই এটা এটা গেছ কৰিব
Start going.
start কৰিব পাৰি
Namaskar. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Prabalika Sharma, Head of the Department of English, Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya. A hearty welcome to you all to today's webinar. The topic of today's webinar is folk music of Assam, which has been organized by the Cultural Development Committee, Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya. It is the objective of the Cultural Development Committee to promote and arrange extracurricular activities to bring out the talents of students in the performing arts. Cultural education helps students to reflect upon their own culture, culture of others, and culture in general. It is very important to remember that creativity, diversity, and artistic quality are all an integral part of social development. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
মানে start কৰিব পাৰে নেকি
তুমি বিকাশ এইটো
হয় start
Because
Madam?
you'll play the
Madam.
theme song.
ঠিক আছে
মানে start কৰিব পাৰে নেকি
This is the theme song of our college, which has been composed by Dr. Bijoylakshmi, Associate Professor, Department of Assamese. She has composed it, and it mentions the location of the college, which is on the world famous Dept, the Ramsarani site, and also about the founding fathers of the college. That was really very touching. It always has that impact on all of us. Now, over to the convener of the Cultural Development Committee of Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya College, Dr. Bijoylakshmi Baidu, for the welcome address. And I also would like to request Baidu to sing a Borgit after the welcome address.
Namaskar. A very warm good afternoon to everyone present here. I, on behalf of Cultural Development Committee of Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya, am very pleased to welcome our research person of today's national webinar on folk music of Assam, Dr. Dilip Kumar Kalita sir, Professor and Director ABILAC, also folklorist and musician. We welcome our Honorable Principal Sir, Dr. Rana Sarmah sir, as inaugurator of today's webinar. We welcome you, sir. We are happy to welcome all the valued participants, which are the source of inspiration for today's webinar. Without their participation, this webinar will not be fruitful. We welcome Mrs. Parul Bossa, Vice Principal and Chairperson of CDC of Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya. We welcome Dr. Prabalika Sarma, HOD, Department of English, Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya, who will be the moderator of today's webinar. We also welcome Mrs. Monisha Sarma, HOD, Department of Education, and Dr. Gagan Jyoti Bora, HOD, Department of Political Science, and all the teaching and non-teaching staff of Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya. We welcome all of you. We also welcome Mr. Ricky Sarma, Cultural Secretary of PGM, and all the members of PGM Students Union. We welcome the authority and all the members of CDC. We also welcome our technical assistant, Mr. Vikas Datta. At last, but not the least, we welcome all of you to this virtual platform, hoping for your sincere cooperation and support. Thank you. Now, I will sing Borgit of Mahapurush Madhav Dev, Mahapurush Shankar Dev Virasita, Pawe Pori, Orohoka. Pori Hari Karuhu Katori Rana Rakhobi Mura Bihaya Bihadhara Bikhe Jara Jara Jivana Na Rahe Thora Rana Rakhobi Mura Athira Dhana Jana Jivana Jovana Athira Hupankhara Putra Paribara Bhabohi Akhara Karabu mura kamala dala jala sita sansala thirano he kilaye ka nahi bhayo bhaba bhuke hari hari parampada para teka prana rakhobi mura kahotu hankara edukha hagara parakara rishike kha tuhu goti moti gehu siri pati tatta pantha upa dekha prana rakhobi mura pave pori hari karuhu katori prana rakhobi mura prana rakhobi mura prana rakhobi mura.
Thank you so much, Bijoylakshmi Baido. That was so soothing.
Thank you.
Now, over to our principal, respected sir, respected Rana Sarma sir, Dr. Rana Sarma sir, for the inaugural address.
Good afternoon, everybody. Myself, Rana Sarma, Principal, Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya. Respected resource person, Professor Dilip Kumar Kalita, Director, Anandaram Borua Institute of Language, Art and Culture, North Guwahati. Parul Boissa, Vice Principal, and Bijoylakshmi Das, Convener, and Dr. Gaganjyoti Bora, Monisha Sarma, Dr. Prabalika Sarma, and all members of the Cultural Development Committee, and our valued participants. I, on behalf of the Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya family, also would like to welcome you all to this significant academic event. The topic which has been chosen for today's discussion, that is folk music of Assam, is an extremely relevant topic for discussion. Folk music originates in traditional popular culture. Folk music is typical of unknown authorship and is transmitted orally from one generation to another. It will not be wrong to refer to folk music as rural music passed down from families and other small social groups. It lives in an oral tradition and it is learned through hearing rather than reading. The northeast of India has been processing at its own pace. Apart from the rest of the country, India, its culture, tradition, and traditional practices, dances, and music auklets, etc. remain unexposed until recently. And Assam happens to be the anthropologist's paradise. But she could, with equal, even greater justification, be called the folklorist paradise. The enormous diversity of groups and subgroups inhabiting in the different areas and hills and plains of the state constitute an almost inexhaustible source of material both for anthropologists and the folklorists. Assamese folk songs current in different parts of the state in its different local dialects and among different groups present an almost bewildering mass. The vast body of material can be classified into various categories and subcategories based on such criteria as content, form, context, texture, and so on without frameworks that admit of local and meaningful analysis of the various items. I have read of some classifications of folk songs. Among these, songs of religious and devotional content, songs linked with ceremonies, songs of love and attachment, ballads, and other narrative songs, miscellaneous songs and rhymes. I am looking forward to get more details from our respected resource person, Professor Dilip Kumar Kalita. Sir, he was also resource person in one of our webinar last month. So with these few words, I declare the webinar is inaugurated. Thank you. Thank you all the members of the Cultural Committee, especially Bijoylakshmi. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. You were so informative and encouraging, as you always are, in organizing these events. Now, we have a student of ours, that is Krishna Das, who is going to sing a song, Rup Kuwar Jyoti Prasad Agarwala Hongitala, Jyoti Hongitala. Krishna Das.
Namaskar. He ujiya, he ujiya, he ujiya, he ujiya, lani koi rule oi gosor hari. Heuji gosate hunor guti lani koirule oi gosor hari heuji gosate hunor guti heuji gosate hunor guti lage hira phule mare puhar sati Heuji gosate hunor guti Heujiya Heujiya Bhati dekho re bonuwa sualiyo Bhati dekho re bonuwa sualiyo tupurit bhorabi komal pate bhagori jirabi hiri khor sathe anguli bolabi pate pate khor koi bolabiyo Heujiya Heujiya Lakho lakh takare muke nate घर को आंगुली पाते पाते लाखों लाख टकारे मुके नाते घर को आंगुली पाते पाते चाहरे बागिचा নহয় मोर देउता रूपरे बागिचा आसे फुली সেউজী গছতে সোণৰ গুটি সেউজীয়া 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 লানি কৈ ৰুলে ঐ গছৰ হাৰি সেউজী গছতে সোণৰ গুটি লানি কৈ ৰুলে ঐ গছৰ হাৰি সেউজী গছতে সোণৰ গুটি সেউজী গছতে সোণৰ গুটি লাগে হীৰা ফুলে মাৰে পোহৰ চাতি সেউজী গছতে সোণৰ গুটি সেউজীয়া 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 ধন্যবাদ
Thank you, Krishna. That was really very nice. I'm reminded of my student days when we used to sing Jyoti Khangit in groups, chorus, and it used to inspire us so much. Even today, it moves us.
Thank you.
Now, the most important session, that is the lecture session. But before that, an introduction of our illustrious resource person by our vice principal, Prabalika ma'am, who is also the chairman of the Cultural Development Committee of Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya. Over to Parul ma'am for the introduction of our resource person.
Thank you, Prabalika. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, we are pleased to have among us renowned folklorist and musician Dr. Dilip Kumar Kalita, professor and director at ABILAC. He has served in 4 colleges, including our Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya and DK College Mirza, before joining ABILAC as a reader in the year 1996. He is a recipient of the Joy Singh Hanse Award of Ahom Sahitya Sabha in the year 2018. He has presented around 40 papers in national and international seminars in India and 10 countries abroad. He is also a member of the International Society for Folk Narrative Research and committee member of Belief Narrative Research and international body, as well as the Joint Secretary of the Assam Academy for Relations, member of the Folklore Society of Assam. We are hopeful that his valuable words of wisdom today will give us a different insight into the rich world of folk music of Assam. Thank you. Over to Prabalika.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you, Parul ma'am. Now,
Yes.
over to our resource person, Professor Dilip Kalita, sir. So we are honored to have you here. So platform is yours, sir.
Thank you, Prabalika. Very good afternoon to everybody. Well, I am supposed to talk on folk music of Assam. Now, before I talk on folk music of Assam, I would like to say a few words about folk music, how it is studied worldwide. In fact, the study of folk music came into vogue quite recently. At the initial stages of folklore study, more emphasis was given on tales. In fact, the first studies were only of tales, and Steve Thompson had prepared a motif index of folk tales, and that emphasis remained prominent for quite some time. After him, N.P. Rana also studied folk tales, and he added to the tale type index, and finally Thompson and Rana came out with motif and type index of folk tales. So in this way, folk tale study was regarded to be the study of folklore for quite a long time. But gradually, the emphasis shifted on particularly folk life. Actually, the initial researchers of folklore were mostly of anthropology and literature based. Therefore, they had emphasized on folk tales preliminarily. But finally, it came to study folk life, and in folk life, a great deal of emphasis is there on the folk music. So folk music also came to be studied, and in one of the authoritative essays written by George List in again the authoritative folklore text, Folklore and Folk Life, edited by Richard Dorson, George List had defined folklore as something that is verbal. And he, of course, had raised a very important point that in folklore, everything is oral. Oral literature was regarded as folk. And folk songs or folk music also was regarded to be oral. But George List had given a slightly different interpretation, that in order to be oral, it has to be oral. Oral, O-R-A-L, and oral, A-U-R-A-L. Oral is pertaining to the ears, that is listening. First, we have to listen to something in order to remember it and then again present it. So he had given to this oral. I agree with his oral emphasis, but then regarding with the verbal part, I have some reservations. Now, music is not merely verbal. In the Indian context, music is defined as Gitam, Baitam, Riktam, Sangitam, Uchyate. So, song, dance, and instruments, musical instruments, all three are called Sangeet, that is music. So in folk music also, I don't think that it is any exception to that. In folk music also, songs, dances, and folk musical instruments are equally important as the songs or the text of the songs. The Western scholars had missed this part. In India, we have a broader definition of music, a music definition which includes everything, though not everything, I say most things related to the performance of music. Some like to add the drama also in music, the drama part also as a performing art form of music. In any case, the emphasis on these songs, dances, and folk musical instruments are yet to be studied properly. The Western scholars, they formulate their theories on the basis of the data available in their countries or in their uh, localities. But here we have a whole gamut of folk musical instruments and folk dances and folk songs. In the West, some of the musical instruments are shared in both classical and folk. For example, the violin. It's a folk musical instrument as well as a classical musical instrument. The great operas have used violin in their renderings. So here, of course, different breed of musical instruments in our folk music. Now, in case of dances also, in the West, the dance forms are not that rigidly defined and rigidly differentiated from folk and classical. We don't have the concept of classical music in all the countries. In some of the countries, we have the operas, then the dances are based on that, and these are regarded to be classical. But then the same motifs are used in the folk music also, in the folk dance also. And in some folk dances, of course, there are some differences, but yet it is quite near. The opera dances and the folk dances of the West are quite uh, closely connected. In the same way, the musical instruments, the folk musical instruments, and the uh, sophisticated classical musical instruments are also quite closely connected. The same instruments are used for the operas, the concerts, as well as the folk songs and folk music. There are some instruments in the West also, which are used exclusively for folk music. But even then, the emphasis is not that much as in case of Indian folk music. So in Indian folk music, I would like to say that we have these three parts of the uh, subject, folk music. One is the song, the next is the dances, and the third is the musical instruments. And some like to add the drama also. In fact, the dances itself have some elements of drama. Some of the folk dances have the elements of drama, which can be regarded as folk drama or semi-dramatic performances. I will come to that later. Now, in case of folk music, it is not very easy to go deep into it. Most of the scholars, most of the students of folklore are good academicians, no doubt. But then they don't have the acumen of the say musicians. Writing the notations or reading the notations, understanding the tunes, the ragas, the talas, etc., are very rare among the scholars, because of which folk music hasn't uh, got that much of importance, because most of the scholars, they like to deal with the uh, other genres of folklore. The other genres are just like literature or anthropology or study of different aspects of the human life, human existence in material culture, in uh, oral literature or folk performing arts or social folk customs. But music is something very specialized. For that, actually, we should have a combination of a folklorist and a musician. I don't claim that I have that capability. Even I don't have that capability. The organizers have introduced me as a folklorist and musician. I do like to be called a folklorist and a musician, but being a musician is very difficult task. So I may have some knowledge of Indian classical music or some amount of folk music, but then that itself is not sufficient to be regarded to be a musician. One has to have the knowledge of all forms of music of the world, the Western music, the Western notation systems, which is called staff notation. Um, unless one has mastery over all this, it is very difficult to study music. Sometimes we see half of it or we see a part of it. if we don't have the knowledge of the say holistic music, or if we don't have a background of music, a strong background of music, then it is very difficult to study music. So in folk music also, we have for most of the times been dealing with the text. We have the collections of folk songs. We have very early collections of folk songs. Um, Professor Hemanta Kumar Sarma had done some collections of folk songs, Kamrupi Lukogiti Hongro. Then some other people had collected. We have some collections of folk songs. But then study of folk songs is done only as a textual study. It has not been done as a musicological study. The musicological study is something which is required for studying folk music also. Of course, there has been some attempts to do justice to the subject by studying it musicologically. We had one principal, Povitra Pran Goswami from Jorhat, who had studied the Borgits. His thesis was Borgit, a musicological study. So that was, in fact, the first musicological study of any form of music in Assam. But then that was Borgit. It is very difficult to call Borgit's folk song. In the Western world, traditional music and folk music are synonymous. They are the same. When we talk of folk song, we can call it a traditional song also. To some extent, these terms are used here also in different competitions of the colleges and universities, varsity weeks and youth festivals. We have traditional tribal song. The term is traditional tribal song. It is not called traditional folk song or tribal folk song. So here it extends to folk songs. Now, here in West, it is synonymous, but here, though we loosely use the term traditional, it is very difficult to mean both the things, the folk songs to be traditional, and sometimes the traditional songs may not be folk songs. The Borgits are the examples of that. Now, actually, Borgits are a kind of classical music, as studied by Dr. Pavitra Pran Goswami. Borgits are a type of classical music, as he has found out, that it is the Prabandha Gan or Prabandha Geet that is out of practice now. It has been almost given up in all parts of the country, but at one time it was also a genre of Indian classical music, just like the Khyal or the Tappa or Thungri or Tarana. Prabandha Gan also was a genre. But Borgit is said to be of the type of this Prabandha Git. So if Borgit is like Prabandha Gan or Prabandha Git, then we cannot call it a folk song. And for another reason, we cannot call it folk song because of the sacredness attached to it. These songs are devotional, and it was composed by the two great gurus of Assam, Shankardeva and Madhavdeva, for which, because of this loftiness, it is not regarded as a folk song, but as a traditional devotional song, which has the capability of coming into the fold of classical music. Dr. Maheshwar Neog used to call it the noble numbers. So in this way, we have to eliminate the Borgits from the realm of folk music, because right now it is not recognized as classical music, no doubt. But we can't say that it will never be recognized. Our Kshatriya dance also was not recognized as a classical dance in the last century, before the chair of the Sangeet Natak Academy was Dr. Bhupen Hazarika. Only during his term, the Kshatriya dance was recognized as a form of classical music. So in this way, someday The Borgits also may be recognized as a form of Indian classical music. We have some other forms of music which are right now regarded as folk music, but have very strong and very deep-rooted classical elements in it. The ragas are there. The use of the ragas are there. They are the Ujapali. Now, Ujapali is regarded as a folk song right now, but then it has a lot of uh, qualities for which it may also rise up to the standard of classical music. Of course, it is a wholesome performance. It's a song, dance, and drama with musical instruments. Though the instruments are very well is used, the tal, which we call tal, kuti tal. So with that instrument and the dance performance, along with some semi-dramatic performances in the presentation, these Ujapalis are sung, which are very long narratives and mostly epics. The text of the Ujapali is folk, no doubt. In folklore, we have the epics also as one genre. The epics, ballads, folk tales, myths, legends, these are the covered under folklore. So in this way, the text of the uh, Ujapali performers are very much folklore. But then the singing, if one day it achieves the status of classical music, I won't be very surprised. Apart from this, Borgits and Ujapali, we have different forms of folk music. From the very time of birth till death, a lot of music is performed. A lot of music is learned, disseminated, and performed. So among these different genres, we have a lot of types of music. I will not go to the classification of this folk music because different scholars like to classify folk music in different heads. I will not go to that. Even the scholars like Dr. Prafulla Datta Goswami had given a classification. Dr. Navin Chandra Sarma had given a classification. Dr. Birendranath Datta also has suggested a classification in his historic book Homia Hongito ঐতিহ্য. Incidentally, that book is being translated. It has been translated rather, but awaiting publication. Incidentally, I myself have done the translation. So these scholars, they all have attempted to give classifications of different folk music. I will not spend time on these classifications, but I will like to talk something on the different forms of music. We have the non-tribal music as well as the tribal music. Now, why I call non-tribal? I don't call it Assamese music or say mainstream music. I call it non-tribal because the tribes are very uh, compact whole. They have their uh, parameters, they have their um, areas, and whatever is tribal is very easily identifiable. We can identify the tribal material, we can identify the tribal song, we can identify it by the language, by the style, by the custom, and so many other factors. But in case of the other forms of music, in case of if we call it Assamese music, then it will be very difficult because Assamese consists of many subgroups. Many components are there in this term Assamese. We have the Ahoms, we have the um, erstwhile tribal people, we have the Brahmins, the Kalitas, Vaishyas, Shudras, these are there. And apart from that, we have the T tribes, some of them who have given up their mother tongue and speak Assamese as the mother language. And we have some tribals who has given up their original language and have taken Assamese as the mother tongue. So in this way, we have many people who speak Assamese as the mother tongue, but they don't share the same songs, because song is very much cultural. Language is also a part of very important part of culture, no doubt. But apart from that, something specific is there when we call culture, and they are the folklore, and they differ in their folklore, and therefore they differ in the songs and dances. Some are shared, no doubt. Some songs are shared, some dances are shared, but even then, everything is not shared. In a tribal society, in, say, for example, among the Karbis, when we say a Karbi song, it is a Karbi song. It is not a Boro song or a Missing or a Rabha song or any other community song. It is a Karbi song. So here, I therefore like to differentiate these folk music genres as tribal and non-tribal in Assam. And every community has their own folk songs, their folk music, folk dances, folk drama, everything. And they are all different. Therefore, it is very difficult to classify under one head. In some societies, some importance is there in one aspect, while in some societies the importance is on other aspect. Death is a ritual which is common to all the communities, the tribe, be it tribal or non-tribal. But death is a kind of mourning. Death is not a kind of rejoicing in most cases. But we have societies here in Assam itself where death is mourned, no doubt, but yet it is regarded to be the way for the recreation, the germination of the new life. In among the Karbis, for example, we have the Chomankan festival. It is called the festival, which is the death ceremony, and lots of singing and dancing is there. It is a 3-day ceremony normally, and day in and day out dancing is there. Dancing and singing continues, and we have professional singers who go on singing the commentaries of the festivals, and there are some songs and dances which are sung by the participants differently. And there we have some songs and dances which otherwise would not have been sung because of the so-called element of vulgarity. It is not regarded to be vulgar when it is sung in a Chomankan. It is regarded to be a ritual of fertility. The death of a person directly involves the birth of another person in the family. The soul of the dead comes to the family in the new birth. So it is just transferring of the soul. The dead person is cremated, and then the new baby is named after the dead person. The new baby which comes to the family immediately after the death of a person, or the last person who was to die, normally is believed to take birth. Sometimes, of course, other members also take birth who died earlier, and it is decided by the process of divination. Process of divination by different methods, say by examining the liver, which is called hepatoscopy, by examining the cories, by examining the bamboo splitters. So in this way, it is found out which person has taken rebirth in the family, and he or she is named after that person. No new name is given to him or her, the new baby. The name of this person who died long back or recently is given to the newborn. So in this way, this festival, Chomankan, is a 3-day festival of singing and dancing. So we cannot say that death is mere mourning. We have the professional lamenter in this festival who goes on singing the praise of the dead and reminds the audience about the good deeds of the dead, and sings as if she is weeping. Normally, the singer is a woman and sings as if she is weeping. So it is lamentation, the same kind of singing as we have in the Rudali, which Dr. Bhupin Hazarika had tapped in his film. So the Rudalis are also professional weepers. So we have this kind of professional weeping in the Karbis also. And apart from that, there is a lot of singing, dancing, and mark making and matchmaking also. During this Chumankan festival, there is a lot of matchmaking also. Boys and girls fall in love, and boys and girls elope and get married. So these things take place. It is something of a fertility cult, just like the boys and girls falling in love during Bihu and getting married soon after that, or eloping during the Bihu. So this is there. Therefore, the music, the singing, dancing, and musical instruments playing is not merely an entertainment in the folk society. It is not a pastime. It is not merely an entertainment, as in case of many other musical forms, which are entertainment. Sometimes it is thought of leading to salvation. The devotional songs, for example, the Nam, then Bukhai Nam, I Nam. Then again, we have these different forms of Kamuki Lukagit and Gwalpuriya Lukagit, where we have the songs of Nimai Honyahi, which are devotional, and Hibornam. So in this way, these songs are supposed to be aiding in attaining salvation, for going to heaven straightway. So these are the purposes of these folk songs. The folk songs are not merely entertainment; they have a purpose. So among these Karbis, it is the fertility cult, and it gives rebirth to a dead soul in the family, and it is related to life. It is related to the multiplication of the tribe. It relates to the handing down of the music from generation to generation. So in this way, lots of things are there in folk music. Now, in case of the folk music, in tribal folk music particularly, we see that they have some specific patterns. Now, one thing I would like to say that every music, every form of music can be written down in notation, be it staff or the Indian solfa system. The Indian system of notation, which is done by using the notes sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni. So in the West also, they have a tradition of writing notations with the 7 notes, which they call do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, or sol, la, si. So it can be written that way also. But the most popular form of, or the most say useful form of writing notation is the staff. Staff is a form of notation where we use only symbols. Symbols semitones. So in this way, we have a symbol for the scale as well, and we can write down the whole song in the script of staff, that is called a manuscript, and one can sing the song by looking at it, or play the song by looking at it. And most of the Western concerts, Western songs are written in this form, in the staff system. But here in India, we write in the this solfa system, actually. with the help of the Indian notes sa re ga ma pa dha ni. So while singing a folk song, we are using the same notes because there is a limitation of the musical notes. There are 7 of them, major notes, and we have some minor notes also. If we add all of them, we have 12 notes, and all music should fall within these 12 notes. In the way we have to write every English word using the 26 alphabets. In the same way, we use every song, we write every song, or we sing every song using these 12 notes. Of course, there are some more notes. Some quarter notes are also there. We have some say flexibility in the number of notes here, but the major notes are 12. The important notes are 12, and we have some other quarter notes also. So when we analyze the folk songs by making the notation of these songs, then we will find that somehow or other it has been composed in a particular raga, which is used for Indian classical music. The Boro music, Boro songs, for example. When I say Boro songs, it brings into mind a tune which you all feel, maybe Bagurumba or something, which comes to your mind as a Boro tune. And when we write it down, we'll find that it has been using 5 notes only, and it is in a particular raga. The Boro tunes are mostly in the raga Durga, and it is written in 5 notes mostly. So in music, we have the system of analyzing or writing or having ragas of 5 notes, 6 notes, and 7 notes. In Indian classical system, we have 7 notes in ascending and 7 notes in descending, 6 in ascending, 6 in descending, 5 in ascending, 5 in descending, and we may have another combination of 5 ascending, 6 descending, 5 ascending, 7 descending. So we may have this type of combination of ragas, which gives us a few combinations, and these combinations are able to absorb any music in the world unless it is less than 5 notes. There are some form of music where only 3 notes or 4 notes are used, mostly in folk music. In classical music, in order to be a classical music proper, it has to be having minimum of 5 notes. It cannot have less than 5 notes. But in folk songs, in folk music, we may have less than 5 notes. We have a musical instrument called hutuli, which is used in bihu. It's a form of an instrument which is made of say clay. It's a small instrument with 2 holes and a hollow center, and it can produce only three notes. So in this way, in folk songs, it is possible, but hutuli cannot be used as a classical musical instrument. A lead classical musical instrument in which you can play solo, because it has to play at least 5 notes. So we have, in case of the folk music, songs which use less than 5 notes, instruments where you can produce less than 5 notes. In this way, we have lots of musical instruments. In the Serenda also has some limitation of producing music, notes. It does not produce many notes. The Dutura also does not produce many notes. It will be very difficult to play raga in a Dutara from in all the octaves. Normally in classical music, 3 octaves are used for playing or singing. We have the lower octave, the middle octave, and the higher octave. So in Dotara, while playing Dotara, we don't use all the octaves. It is very difficult to play all the octaves. Some expert players can play, but normally when we accompany with the folk song, be it Kamrupi Lukogit or Gwalpuria Lukogit, it is tuned in such a way that all the octaves cannot be produced in it. So in this way, folk musical instruments are having some limitations of notes. In Assamese folk music. Some produce very little notes, while some produce as many notes as the classical musical instruments. The flute, for example. The flute is a musical instrument which is used in Indian classical music also, but it is a major instrument in folk music. Flute is used by almost all the tribes of Northeast, not merely in Assam, but the whole of Northeast. Flute is a very common musical instrument, and it is used elsewhere also. Some say that we use flute here because we have lots of bamboo, but flutes are used at other places also where the bamboo doesn't grow. Flute is such a beautiful instrument that they try to that
is
there any problem? I'm hearing something. Somebody is saying something. Is there any problem? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Shall I continue?
Yes, sir.
It's okay, sir. You can continue.
Yes, sir.
So the flute is an Indian classical musical instrument and at the same time a folk musical instrument also. Now, flute is a worldwide folk musical instrument as well as a classical musical instrument. But the West has given some improvisations to the instrument, and they have made different types of flutes where it is played like the clarinet also at times with some buttons used. But here we don't use any button to close the holes of the flute. We use only the fingers. So regarding the limitation of notes, we see that in folk music, we have the limitations. We sometimes use lesser notes than the classical music, but at times we use the same number of notes like the classical music also. Now, in some case of in some instruments, which are regarded to be classical nowadays, the classical musical instrument, where again at one time was a folk musical instrument. I think flute also was like that. And another very important musical instrument, which is not very common here in the Northeast, we have only one or two players. That is the santoor. The santoor is a musical instrument which is played in Kashmir here in India and the other Middle East countries, which uses lots of strings to produce lots of sounds, lots of notes. And initially it was a folk music, but sometimes one particular maestro creates magic. Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma was the person who played santoor, the folk musical instrument, the classical way.
Classical.
And finally, it entered the fold of the Indian classical music. Now, santoor is used in Indian classical music also. But prior to Shiv Kumar Sharma, it was a folk musical instrument. So in this way, we have some musical instruments which are used in folk as well as classical music, whereas we have some musical instruments which are exclusively used in folk music. The one thing we have found that in case of the instruments in classical music, it requires a lot of expertise, lot of practice, and lot of learning to play the instrument to earn mastery over the instrument. But in case of folk music, you just learn it by doing. You just acquire the knowledge of playing while listening to it or while seeing somebody playing to it. You don't have to spend 5 years or 10 years learning it under a guru. You just go on accompanying the team of performers, and finally, if you have interest, you start playing while the expert player keeps his instrument down. Sometimes you hear a scolding or two, and finally you learn how to play. So they are not very complicated. The learning of these musical instruments are not very complicated in folk music. But some musical instruments, some folk musical instruments are very difficult to play. Some types of flutes, say the long flutes, which I'd rather call trumpets of the tribes of Northeast. Among the Nimasas also we have that. Among the Nisings also we have. Among the Rabhas also we have that. In Rabhas they call it Kharanol, perhaps, if I am not mistaken. Yeah, it is Kharanol. So it's a very long bamboo pole which is joined part by part, and one hole is created, and wind is blown at the one end, and finally music is created, the sound is created. It has a very limited uh, range of notes, of course. It is it is better to be called trumpet. So these, in the trumpet, it is very difficult to produce a sound. It is just like the blowing of the conch. I think most of the people are familiar with the conch, which is blown by the purohit in a puja. If you try to blow the conch, then you will find that in the initial stage you will not be able to make any sound of it. So in the same way, there are some musical instruments which are very difficult to play, or sound is very difficultly produced, and it is not a cup of tea for anybody. So we have different types of musical instruments. The musical instruments are classified mostly in the Indian system in four categories. They are the strings, then wind instruments, the leather instruments, and the solid instruments. In solid instruments, we have the bell, the cymbal, or the toka that is played in Bihu. So in this way, this type of instruments which do not use strings, which where sound is not produced by beating any leather on it, wound on it, or which is where no wind is used, where you don't blow, which is just played by beating. These type of instruments are solid instruments. And in case of leather instruments, we have different forms of drums. Now, some drums are similar to the modern drums. It is having uh, the leather on both the sides, but in some drums we have leather only on one side, and one side is open. And in some cases, we have leather only on one side, and the other sides are not open, like the Nagara. And in case of the one side open drum, that is the Kunjuri or uh, Dogor, the Dafli is one. So in this way, we have this type of musical instruments where one side is uh, covered by leather, and we have other drums where both the sides are covered by leather. We have very long drums, short drums, and we have kettle drums. We play on both sides, keeping it horizontally to the ground and playing with both our hands. Sometimes one playing one side with the hand and one side with a stick. And the others types where only one side is open and one side is closed. There we play it keeping it on the ground, and sometimes we tie it on our loins also. We have this type of kettle drums also among our tribes. Among the Karbis, we have the Cheng and the Cheng group. These are the drums where it is played by the sticks, but it is tied to our loin. It is tied around our waist with a band, and finally it is played, and it can be played while walking, just like the band party, which can go on playing while walking. The kettle drums are played that way. In the same way, we have some drums which are uh, kept at one place. For example, the uh, Nagara at the Namghar, it is kept at one particular place. It is kept for uh, two reasons. One is that it is to be kept there, it is to be played there. The other reason is that it is so heavy and so big that it is not possible to carry it everywhere. Of course, at times nowadays people carry those drums also on different vehicles and play on the way also in some processions sometimes in say dharnas, in different say strikes. So in this way, these are being used nowadays, but originally they were meant to be kept in the same place. So we have these type of drums, and we have again big drums as well as small drums. We have the drums of the Bihu, which are of medium size. Then we have the joy dhol and the bor dhol, which are very big, which you carry on your shoulder, and you play with both your hands with a stick on one side and a hand on one side. So in this way, the sizes differ and the length also differ. The length of the Garo drum, for example, which they call it khram, perhaps, yeah. Mm, mm. So the length of the drum is very long. It's a very long drum which you can hardly reach with your hands widely opening. So we have different types of drums in our area, in our region. Actually, we can go on talking on the drums itself for many hours together. If I go to describe them, it will take a very long time. So I will not describe all of them. In every community, every tribe, and drums are very common, and they have great importance in our performances, be it songs or be it dances or be it both songs and dances. In case of the Nagara type drums, we have different types of Nagaras. We have the small ones called Kurkuri, and we have the big ones called Nagara, and we have some medium types also and a very big types also. So these are used for singing merely. But nowadays, some amount of dancing or enactment is also attached with these performances. They have very nicely exploited the rhythm of the drum in the performances also, along with the singing, in the, say, enactments, in the dialogues. Sometimes dialogues are also presented in Nam, in the, say, Dihanam, Thianam, etc., in the Kamrupi and the other places. We have the enactments, the performances of a particular story done by the, say, main singer, the lead singer, and some assistant. Sometimes the lead singer plays the role of two, one at a time. So there, the rhythm of the Nagara is used as a very successful accompanying instrument in the performance of the drama part also. It is used like a background music. So it is basically a singing. Basically, it was meant for singing. I think originally there was no dancing or enactment in our Nams. But nowadays, because of many reasons, I won't go deep into them. Because of many reasons, we have the presenters of this Nam enacting or dancing at times. But in the Namghar, when Nam is presented by, Nam is sung by the Bhakots, then hardly any singing or dancing or enactment takes place. The musical instruments are purely accompaniments to the singing part. But apart from that, the musical instruments are accompaniments of not merely singing, but it is the accompaniment of dancing also. There are some dance forms where only musical instruments are played and no singing is there. We have the bamboo dance of the Mizo people, where they use the long bamboo poles as the rhythm instruments, and only the bamboos are tapped and no singing is done. Only the rhythm of the bamboo pole is exploited for dancing. It is the accompanying instrument for the dance. So we have many such dance forms where we have musical instruments as the accompanying instruments without any major singing. Sometimes very little singing is done. In case of Bihu, for example, we have a very balanced kind of performance. Here singing is there, and at the same time playing of instrument is also there with as important a part as the singing. And the dancing is done in to the accompaniment of the song as well as the musical instrument. And the dancing is done with the accompaniment of singing in a slightly different way. And the say the crescendo or the with the accompaniment of the musical instrument. When the dhol is played, some different complicated and very fast rhythms are played in the dhol. Then the dancer dances to her fullest glee. So the dancing of Bihu is very vibrant with the accompaniment of the musical instrument. And in fact, it is more vibrant than with the accompaniment of singing. Of course, there are other instruments which give some, say, aesthetic beauty to the dances. The accompaniment of the pepa, for example, the accompaniment of the, say, the koka and the cymbals. In this way, we have the accompaniment of the musical instruments in different dance forms. Now, I was talking about the different types of musical instruments, and I have tried to say something about the drums. I think I need not go in detail about all the drums. And in wind instruments actually are blown by the mouth normally in folk instruments. But there are some instruments where the wind is blown not from the mouth, but it is blown from a sack, with a wind sack. We have such wind sacks or wind bags in different musical instruments. The bagpipe, for example. The bagpipe is a very beautiful musical instrument where the wind is exhaled into the wind bag by one hole, and it is inhaled by one hole and exhaled through another hole, and the sound is produced while exhaling, just like the inhaling and exhaling by our lung. In the same way, we have some musical instruments like the harmonium, the accordion, where wind is inhaled to the bag and exhaled from the bag by a process of valves, and sound is produced by the reeds. So in this way, we have some musical instruments where wind from the mouth is not blown, but in most wind instruments, wind is blown from the mouth. We have the flute, we have the trumpet, we have the mohorking or pepa, we have hutuli. In this way, we have the different types of flute. We don't have only one type of flute. Normally, when we talk about flute, we think of a musical instrument which is kept horizontally from on the ground and played with both the hands at the holes and one with the mouth on the other hole, and which is always kept sideways. But it is not the universal case. We have some flutes which are not kept sideways, but which are kept straight against us. Then we have some musical flutes where sound is produced by blowing a totally, say, blank hole where we don't have the lip of the instrument through which the wind passes. It is a round hole, a long hole, and when you blow air through it in a particular way, then the sound is produced. It is just like producing sound by blowing the say cork of the fountain pen or the ball pen. When you put it against your mouth and blow, it will produce a sound like a whistle. So there are flutes of different types. Then we have flutes of different length, and the tribes of Assam have very elaborate system of making flutes, and they have a very rich tradition of playing flute of different types. And in some cases, there are flutes which are 3-4 meters long and which are played by 2 persons at a time. So these are not the normal practices, but then these musical instruments are there. So these are the wind instruments, and we have different horns played as a musical instrument, and we have different reeds also, which are played as a wind instrument. And in case of stringed instruments, we again have different stringed instruments. The dotara is the most common. in almost all the communities of Assam. We have the serja of the Boro or Serenda. Now, this particular instrument, which is similar to the Indian classical musical instrument sarangi, is seen throughout the Himalayan region from Kashmir to our Assam. It is known by different names. Even in Nepal, it is there, where they call it Gaini. The Serja or Serenda is played by the Boros, the Rabhas, the Dimasas, almost all the tribes of Northeast, and they are very beautiful accompaniments to the songs. And they are made locally. They are made by the folk musicians. Not much say technology is required for making that instrument, and people make it, and they use in most cases the say leather, which is the say mm, which is the skin of the lizard. Uh, the lizard, which is known as guiha in Assamese.
Yes.
So the skin of the lizard, that particular lizard, I think it is monitor lizard in English. Anyway, so these way, if this skin of the lizard is not available, then they use other leather also. The skin of the rabbit, the skin of other animals are also used, and this is very common, and it is played in most of the folk songs of the tribes, and it is an inseparable part of the folk musical performance of the tribes of Assam. Of course, the Dutura is also played by many people, many tribes, and in case of Kamrupi Lukogit, in case of Gwalporia Lukogit, in case of Deh Bisaror Git, which is played in the upper part of the um, Brahmaputra Valley also. So Dutara is a very common instrument, and this Dutara is used not only in Assam, but it is used throughout the eastern part of India, in Bangladesh, and in some parts of Orissa, Bihar, and Bengal. And it is played in some other countries also. But we have a tradition of playing this Dutara along with our folk songs, and sometimes a song without the accompaniment of the Dutara is not very palpable. It is not very pleasant. So these are the different types of musical instruments: the stringed ones, the wind ones, the leather ones, and the solid ones. And apart from that, there are some the ones that I have described. Apart from these, there are some instruments which are specific to our region, specific to some particular tribes, where we make different types of reed instruments of only bamboo. The bamboo itself is used as the reed. The bamboo is used as the bridge of the strings. The strings are used. The bamboo reeds are used as strings, and the bamboo piece is used as a bridge. And the bamboo itself is used as the belly of the instrument, and it is played. But it is not played like a stringed instrument, but it is played like a rhythm instrument. So the instrument, by all means, looks like a stringed instrument. Normally, the function of a stringed instrument is the accompaniment with the tune, with the notes, not to the rhythm of the music. But here we have such instruments which look like a stringed instrument, bamboo stringed instrument, but it is used as a rhythm instrument. Now, there are instruments which are used for accompaniment as rhythm also. The guitar itself is a very sophisticated modern instrument which has come from a very long past. Is used for accompaniment with the tune as well as for production of the rhythm. We get both from it. So we have, in this way, we have some bamboo instruments, we have some reed instruments, and there are some instruments, I don't like to call it instruments, but it is the folk ways, the folk expertise of playing music with leaves. You put a particular leaf uh, up on your tongue and you produce music with it, and you uh, play a whole song with that one, with the leaf on your tongue. And it is possible to sing even produce even Indian classical brand of music with that. So now the classical musician will never do that, I know that, but the folk performers, the folk musicians do it. Normally, when we have these uh, puppetry in puppet theaters, we'll find that the puppeteer, he produces the squeaking sound not with a musical instrument, but by keeping a leaf on the top of his tongue and producing sound with it. And when the dialogues are delivered, he never pronounces the words. He only gives the intonation and the sound with the leaf. So it is something very ludicrous and very comic, which is liked by the children and the audience very much. But when the time comes for singing of a particular character, then he sings the song with the leaf itself. He sometimes sings the wedding songs, the tune of the wedding songs. Sometimes he sings the say Kamrupi folk song. And nowadays he even produces the tune of a popular Hindi movie song also with that. So I don't like to call it a musical instrument, but it's a very powerful medium of producing folk music, and it is liked by the folk. And I have seen it many times, very successfully exploited by the puppeteer. So we have in this way uh, a whole lot of folk musical instruments which can be played by the artist with a little knack for it and a sense of music in it, in his own person, and without any long say learning process like the classical music uh, under a particular guru. So it is just a very say short-term learning by which you learn a musical instrument, but you won't be able to learn it unless you are having the rhythm or the tune within you. You must be accustomed to that. You must be in the culture. You must be a part of the culture. You must enjoy the culture. You must accompany the culture. You must live in the culture. Then only things will come to you automatically. Otherwise, you will have to learn it, and it will be very difficult. Now, when a Bihu song is sung or a Bihu performance takes place at the courtyard of a particular person or a family, then for some time the hosts, they just stand along with the performers, and gradually they start clapping with their hands, and after some time they start moving their bodies along with the rhythm, and after some time they start dancing with the performers. So this is the folk music which brings you in, and you have to go in, and you also have a knack for going in. So in this way, the folk musical instruments as well as folk songs are learned, and you must have a knack for it. You must have a liking for it, or you must have a respect for it. But in most cases, we see that we don't have that was in the past. Until the end of the 20th century, we had a different kind of lifestyle before the digital media came in, before the electronic media came in. So we had a different lifestyle. Uh, Earlier, we had only the radio, but after that, the radio was followed by the gramophone record, and then the magnetic tape record, and finally the digital recording, the pen drive, the compact disc, and the external hard disks and whatnot. Now we have a different kind of accessibility to music here. But at one time, the accessibility to music was only through the radio and through live performances. We used to have seasonal performances like the Bihu. We used to have some other seasonal performances like the Nam in Bhadama. in the month of Bhado. We had the Bhado Mohiyanam. There was no workshop, no training, no school for Bhado Mohiyanam. And the expert ladies or the expert ones, they sang the songs and the others accompanied. And by the end of Bhadama, they became experts in the Nam. And next year, if the original singer, God forbid, expired, then the other accompanists, they take the role of the lead singer. So in this way, we have this kind of learning of the, say, folk music, where we don't have formal schooling or formal learning, but we learn it. So, am I very long? I don't know how much time I have taken. I think I have taken a long time. Anyway, I will not take much more. I think.
So carry on. It's interesting because you have to include everything into it.
No, it's not possible to include everything.
Yeah,
actually, I am at a loss how to say so many things.
I lost track of time.
In Assamese, there's a saying, Gurukat Hati Bhorua. So I have to do something like that. And by doing that, I cannot give justice to anything, any chart. Anyway, I will say only a few things. I will say about the singer now. So the singer.
10 minutes.
Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Now I will talk about the singer or the singers. Now I have already said in one occasion earlier that it is a compact whole which consists of singing, dancing, and say drama. There we have a text of a song, there we have a form of a dance, and we have a enactment of a dramatic scene. So in this way, we have a compact, complete whole, which can be called a folk performance. In most cases, folk performances are like that. But we are familiar with only the folk songs because they are very easy to access. They reach us very easily. You can carry them anywhere. You can carry them in a pen drive and play it in your car also while you are driving. But you cannot carry the performance and enjoy it while driving. So for enjoying a performance of a drama, you have to sit somewhere and you have to spend whole of your attention. You have to give whole of your attention. But singing is something to which you need not pay all of your attention. You can do some other work and also continue enjoying the song. Because of that, perhaps, when we talk of folk songs or folk music, people think mostly of folk songs. Now, in songs, we have a text and we have the tune and we have the performer. The performer sings along with dance sometimes, along with the playing of musical instruments in accompaniment to his songs sometimes, and sometimes without any accompaniment or without any dramatic performance with it or without any enactment. So singing is done in all the forms, with dancing, with singing, with musical instruments or without musical instruments and without dancing also. So the position of the singer, actually singing is something which is not a cup of tea for everybody. We have to be very honest about it. Anybody and everybody cannot sing. It is regarded to be, say, a form of art of the Gandharvas. We call it Gandharva Vidya. One has to be gifted. One has to be gifted with the ability to sing. Otherwise, you cannot become a singer. If it would have been possible for everybody, then everybody of us would have become very good singers. But we cannot become good singers for many reasons. The quality of the voice, the capability of singing in a particular range, the extent of the range from how low to how high. Mostly people sing in a very closed range, maybe 7 or 8 or 10 notes. There are people who can sing up to 16 or 18 notes, 2.5 octaves or even 3 octaves. But mostly people can sing in 1 octave. Sometimes some people cannot even sing a full octave. When you ask him to sing Sare Gama Padani, he may not reach ni. He may say ni, but he may sing dha. He cannot go above dha. It happens. While I have such experiences, a lot of experiences of this kind, where we see people singing the whole song. I've seen people singing the Jana Gana Mana Adhinayaka Jaya Hai, just like reciting, and he thinks that he is singing it. Now, it is not possible for everybody to sing. Now, why am I mentioning this particular aspect of our human ability? Now, in folk songs or in folk music also, we have some people who are gifted, who, if would have got well trained or would have got the training of the classical music, would have become maestros. But because he or she was not having the uh, access to the classical music, be it Hindustani or Carnatic, then he or she has no access, and as such remains a folk singer. He or she has the urge of singing in him or her, but it is such an urge which you cannot subdue. If you have a melodious voice and a capability of singing um, uh, a very wide range of notes, then you become a singer by your own self. You need not learn anywhere. Even when you are going for tending cows, or you are plowing your fields, or you are uh, harvesting your fields, you can sing. You can go on singing. And singing actually began as a work song. Initially, singing was a work song. It was rather a kind of uh, support for the work. It was supporting the work. It was giving some strength to the worker for working. It began like that. Now we have, when we see people loading a truck with a, say, huge log. These scenes are not seen nowadays. If he or she has to load something very big and he has to do only 1 inch at a time with all his implements, then he will make some sounds or some concerted efforts by the whole group, and it is a kind of a rhythmic uh, uttering which everybody says, which is, say, heso, or mm, ho ha. I have seen the Naga people using this ho ha in this way. It is a rhythmic pattern, where rhythmic sound with in which they dig uh, mountains and make roads out of it. So these were the needs for music initially, and now it has risen above that level, and it has become the manifestation of the um, finer self of the human being. And so we have very intricate and very complicated patterns of notes rendered by the singer. So the musician, the singer, has always got some importance because of his uniqueness of his voice and the quality of singing of a great range of notes. Everybody cannot do that, and he becomes the lead singer in most cases. He becomes the leader of the singing troupe, and by dint of that, he becomes the leader of not only the singing troupe but also of the society at times. In every society, the singer has a very high position, but I see that among the Karbis, they have the uh, highest position uh, ascribed to the singer. They regard him next to the god, next to their deity. So they uh, give him a very high position, and he goes on singing. He goes on singing. He presents the uh, necessities of life in singing, and he not only sings the requirements of day-to-day life, but also he sings the ballads and the ritual songs which are necessary, the creation myths, the songs which are narrating the uh, birth of so many things, birth of different objects, maybe the paddy, the animals, the trees. In this way, all these things are sung by the singer who is called a Lunse. And he has a very high position in the society, and he is regarded to be coming directly from the heaven, being by some section. And some section thinks that he was taught by somebody who came directly from the heaven to teach songs, and he was the first singer, he was the first guru of Arabic music. So in this way, the singer has a very high position in the society, not because merely of his physical abilities, his abilities of singing, but also because of his knowledge. Now, it is believed that the folk singer is a repertoire of all knowledge. Now, at one time, we carried all our knowledge in our oral tradition. It was not in pen drive, not in hard drive, it was not in museums, it was not in any, say, oral tradition. Now, the oral tradition was largely dependent upon the singer, because he or she was the one who used to uh, disseminate it, preserve it, and hand it down to the next generation. In most cases, the singer handed it down to the next generation, and in the process of handing down of the tradition, a lot of, say, loss was there. Just like the loss of energy in transmission, we have the loss of transmission, a loss resulted out of transmission. But thanks to the human creativity, human beings are very creative. If some amount of material is lost in the transmission, if you cannot pick up what was known by your predecessor, you can add to it with your own creative genius. And that has happened every time, because of which we have so many versions of the Ramayana. Now, the Ramayana is the epic, and in our folklore terms, it is the epic which is sung. It is then Mahabharata is the epic which is sung by the Ujapali. Monoka Kadbo is the epic which is sung by the Ujapali, both the Dorongia Ujapali as well as the tribal Ujapali, the Rabha Ujapali of Kamrup, South Kamrup. So in this way, they have been singing these Ujapalis, the epics, and while handing down the epic, the Guru did not hand over a written script. He used to sing, and his assistant used to pick up whatever he sang. And whether he picked up all words or not, he picked up the story. He picked up the story and he recreated it in his own language. So in this way, the continuity remained, and we get a different version or a variant. So in the same way, we have so many versions of the Ramayana in Southeast Asia. I think it was Blockman, Paula Blockman, I think. I sometimes forget names. So she had written the book Many Ramayanas, where she has talked about the 300 plus versions of the Ramayana. So we have more versions of the same folk material. Now that is one criteria of being folk. If we have only one version and that is stuck very religiously, and there is no change, and there is no version, and there is no addition and omission, then it is no longer a folk thing. It becomes a classical piece. So at the same time, the anonymity also counts. It has to be anonymous. Now, there are some questions regarding the anonymity of the folk songs, the folk music. If somebody writes a song, whether will it be a folk song or not, if it is purely in the pattern of a folk song, maybe the Kanupi folk song or the Gwalparia folk song or any other folk song. Now, there are people who say that if it is written by Mr. X and it is known to everybody, then it cannot be a folk song. But there are scholars who say that if it transcends the written stage and enters the oral tradition, then it can be regarded as a folk song. Now, in most cases, in the modern world, we have a written version first. People write down first, and then it is performed. But earlier, it was the other way around. We had an oral creation, and that was written down later. Even the Vedas were flourishing in that trend, were flourishing in the oral tradition for a long time, finally being written down as the Vedas. In case of the Ramayanas and the Mahabharatas also, the translated versions appeared much later than the prevalence of the Ramayana in a particular community in India. The first Ramayana was translated, the Valmiki version of the Ramayana was translated. I call it Valmiki version because there are some other versions also which have become very popular. The first Valmiki Ramayana was translated by Kamban in Tamil language, and after that it was in the 12th century. And in the next translation into any other Indian language, and the first Indo-Aryan language was the Assamese translation by Madhav Kondoli. It was in the 15th century, perhaps, if I am not mistaken, 15th century. Well, that was the second translation. But then we cannot say that the Ramayana did not exist prior to 12th century in India or in Assam. Though it was in Sanskrit, it was popular among the common folk also. The stories were popular, and we had the tradition of listening to katha. We had the tradition in Assamese of puthi porha. So we had the tradition of listening to this puthi porha in Assam and listening to katha in the rest of the country in India, in the northern part of India particularly, where the text was read out by a scholarly singer. Rather, I call him a scholarly singer because he used to sing. It was not mere recitation. It was with the full form of singing. It was in the full form of singing using most of the notes and the ragas. It was sung in different ragas. The different chapters were sung in different ragas using different tunes, different notes, and with different rhythms also. Now, people with these abilities used to sing we used to sing the say texts in the original language, that is Sanskrit, and used to explain it in the indigenous language. Sometimes it was explained in Hindi wherever Hindi people are there. It was explained in Assamese in Assam. And in the process of explaining, sometimes very comic situations also arise. Some very jocular expressions also are there regarding the explanation of the scriptures. And in this way, the Ramayana was there before the translation. And the texts precede the writing down in the earlier days. The writing down takes place later, and now, of course, it is writing first and getting by heart later, and sometimes not getting by heart at all. You have to read the text while singing. And in case of this, say, performance to the accompaniment of the tracks, you have the facility of the text also. You have the track being played in your digital media, maybe in your mobile phone or your computer. You get the track, and at the same time you get the text of the song word by word, and you can go on singing. So this is so easy that you cannot remember the song at all. It is just like being unable to remember the phone numbers nowadays. We cannot remember phone numbers nowadays because we have them in our mobile phone with their names. But earlier we did not have our mobile phones, and we had to just get the number by heart, or we kept some numbers by heart, and we used to write it down, and we could get them by heart by writing also while writing down. But we don't have that facility now. And in the same way, we don't have the facility of going to the oral tradition from the written now. I doubt if any written tradition will go to the oral tradition anymore because of these facilities. But in the past, we had the facility of, or rather a tendency of going to oral tradition from written. We had a written text which went oral through orality. in this way, we had a lot of material which were written down but became anonymous finally and became folklore. But now I think we won't have that facility anymore. So, in case of folk music, I would like to sum up by saying that it is something which reaches every one of us, which is in every one of us, and which can be learned by almost everybody, whoever has the knack for music, and which touches everyone, and which gives us the identity to be our own community, our own tribe. So I don't know how much I have been able to do justice to the subject, because I had been quite haphazard, because lots of things were there to speak. But with this, thanking you all for giving me an ear for such a long time without saying. I think you have said enough. Without saying that, I thank you once again, and with these few words, I end here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. That was so detailed, informative, interesting. Some of the things I had never heard before. And really, you have mesmerized everyone. And particularly those of us here, there might be some who are going to appear in some competitive exams. For them also, it is going to be very beneficial.
Prabalika, if you permit me, I would like to add one information.
Yeah,
please. One of my research scholars has recently received her PhD. Her name is Dr. Porishmita Sarmah, and the title of her thesis was a musicological study of the devotional songs of Kamrup and Darong. So that was another musicological study in which she had studied the folk music. In the other musicological study, it was Borgate. Now in her study, it was a study of the folk music, musicologically, and she did PhD with me. That is the information I would like to share. I think she is somewhere there in the among the participants.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations, sir. Actually, we have talked about this with sir before in our group, folklore group. It is very interesting, and when you keep on discussing all these things, there is no end. There are so many things to explain, but still, you really did justice. You have touched on almost all the topics. Of course, it is inexhaustible. We know that folklore, it is inexhaustible. So maybe some other day we'll continue this discussion. Now, I know there'll be many questions for you to answer, sir. But before that, we have a student here, Arnima Ahmed from HS second year. She is going to sing a Kolaguru Vishnu Rabha Hongit. Arnima?
Namaskar. Uti charu palina, uti charu palina, uti rupalina, jur koi ba, jur koi ba, jur koi ba. Jur koi ba, o mor postoa moloya ba, o mor postoa moloya ba. Uti charu palina, uti charu palina. देखी तुर हुकुला पाल हिया मुर मारे निताल देखी तुर हुकुला पाल हिया मुर मारे निताल হিয়রি উঠে মোর গাত শুনি তোর মৃদুল সুৰ হিয়ৰি উঠে মোর গাত হিয়ৰি উঠে মোর গাত উটি যাৰু পালি নাও উটি যাৰু পালি নাও লুই তোর বুকুরে ধর নাচি করে তলমল লুই তোর বুকুরে ধর নাচি করে তলমল গাইবই কলকল গাইবই কলকল তোলে সুমধুৰ ৰাগ উটি যা ৰূপালী নাও উটি যা ৰূপালী নাও উটি যা ৰূপালী নাও উটি যা ৰূপালী নাও ধন্যবাদ।
Okay.
Thank you. That was very nice, Anima. Now, actually, we had plans of requesting sir for a violin recital. What do you say, convener?
Yes,
Can
he may play.
yes,
He is a renowned violinist.
yeah. We had given him some time to relax, actually. So we asked Arnima to sing. Sir, are you ready for a recital, sir? Violin recital today? So you unmute yourself.
If possible, Prabalika.
If possible.
If possible.
Give me 5 minutes. After that, I'll come to you. Is there any other agenda?
No, we have question and answer session.
Question and answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Then can we go directly to the question and answer? So actually, I am not that prepared for any musical recital.
It's okay, sir. No problem.
So that is again for another webinar.
And another webinar or another
yes,
day.
Sir, you give your word today, because sir is a very good performer. And he has performed in many national, international things, meets.
Okay.
Now, since sir is not prepared today, I don't think so. It's not that he's not prepared. It's only that he needs more time, because after that lecture, he needs some rest. Okay, so now I'm going to hand over this session to Dr. Gaganjyoti Bora, Associate Professor and Head of the Department of Political Science, for the question answer session. Now over to Gagan Bora, sir.
Thank you.
Not a detail.
There's some problem with the sound, I think. You're not audible.
Not okay.
Actually, his sound is not coming, ma'am.
Yeah, it's not audible. there are many renowned singers and performers in this August gathering today. Checking the names, I can find out.
Now may I audible?
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yes,
yes.
yes. Yeah,
Yes.
you are.
Yes, sir. Yes. Respected principal sir, respected resource person.
Again, problem.
It's you unmute yourself.
Unmute Gogan.
Yes. But before going to introduction, I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to our
Sir.
for fantastic, informative, very brilliant deliberations. As we know, sir is considered as maestro in violin and also has expertise in the field of music also. However, thank you so much, sir. And I am now going to put forward the questions from the sub box to the resource person. The first question is from Dr. Satyajit Das, faculty member, Dept University. His question is, how the folk music is maintaining its authenticity in the face of a strong forces
Check the sound, please.
modernization as well as westernization. Sir.
Gogan, kiba eta শব্দ হৈছে
Sir, Kalita siror laptopot sound to on হৈ আছে বেছিকে সেই sound to অকমান কমাই দিয়ক ইকো হৈ আছে দুজন একে ঠাইতে আছে যে সেইকাৰণে ইকো তো অলপ বেছি হৈছে
আচ্ছা
Kalita siror যদি লাউড স্পিকাৰ তো অকমান কমাই দিয়ে আপোনাৰ sound to ভালকৈ আহিব ঠিক আছে এতিয়া কওক
The first question asked by Dr. Satyajit Das, faculty member of Dept University. His question is, how the folk music is maintained its authenticity in the face of the strong forces like globalization, modernization, as well as westernization. Sir.
So again, you have to unmute yourself.
There is nothing like authenticity. There is nothing like authenticity in folk music actually. Since it is a oral tradition which provides for versions and variants. There is no question of authenticity or authentic text. Every text is acceptable, every variant, every version is acceptable. Only the thing is that I think you have meant folk music by authentic music, whether it is folk music or not. Now, at times it becomes very difficult to make watertight compartment between folk music and other forms of music. As I had already said, like in the case of the folk musical instrument santoor, it was a folk instrument, but it became a classical musical instrument. So in this way, at times it becomes very difficult in some cases. But it is from the other factors which decide something to be folk or not. What is folk? Now for that you have to go to what is folk. Whatever is folk, in case of music, that is folk music and that is authentic folk music.
Thank you. Second question asked by Meenakshi Boiragi. The question is that, what is the future of folk music since the context of performing them have been changed or disappeared completely in the present day context?
Yeah. For a long time, it was believed that the context is very important for for a long time. It was believed that the context is very important for being or remaining folk. But it has been seen that gradually the contexts are dying out. We have a very good example of the death of the context in the tea tribes of Assam. We have the Tusu Parab, Tusu Puja, Koram Puja. These forms of their performances are fully with agriculture. These are agricultural rites. These are agricultural rights followed by the people for protecting their crops, for the good yield of their crops. So these actually are purely agricultural. But when these people from the Chota Nagpur plateau area came to Assam and started staying in the tea gardens, they had totally given up the agriculture. They became industrial laborers. Now, tea is an industry, and the tea industry laborers are not agricultural laborers. They are industrial laborers as per category. So they have maintained the Tusu Parab, Koram Parab, and all the other performances, Chumur Nach and all that. And they are still alive amongst them and in a very vibrant way. And they have survived for this around 200 years. So if these things can survive without the context, then why not other things without context? The other things also will survive without context. Now the Bohag Bihu also has become almost a contextless performance. The city dwellers, the town dwellers, they don't have direct relation with agriculture. They don't go to the field for cultivation. In times of Kati Bihu, Kongali Bihu, they don't go to the fields to pray for their crops. Most of the people then in Maghar Bihu, the city dwellers, they don't go for harvesting crops, but then they follow all these bihus. They perform all the rituals related with these bihus, and for the well-being of the crops and for protection of the crops and in the joy of harvesting of the crops. So without context, many things can survive. Many things have survived and will continue to survive. Only the thing is that because of the change of lifestyle, the context will be lost, but then the performance will be there and they will attain a more sophisticated form. And at times, they may even acquire the stature of classical form in some cases. In case of dances, for example, nowadays the Bihu dance is so, say, full of forms. It is performed with so much of formality, with do's and don'ts. What cannot be done, what can be done, what should be worn, what should not be worn, what mudra, what shape of the hand should be and what should not be. All these things have cropped in. So in this way, that is the criteria for becoming, those are the criteria for becoming classical dance. Actually, someday I won't be, say, surprised if there is a, say, classical dance named Bihu dance. It may be possible. Everything is possible. In Kelucharan Mohapatra's Odissi dance, which was a lost dance form. Odissi was a lost dance form which was not performed anymore by anybody. But Kelucharan Mohapatra, he observed the sculptures of the temple in different dance postures, and he gave life to the dance postures. He joined one dance posture after another and he created a dance form. And finally, Odissi became a recognized classical dance, which was lost, totally lost one day. And this may be possible in case of folk performances or folk forms, folk dances, folk music also. It may survive without the context, and it may survive in a more flourished way. It may be in every drawing room. It may be in every Facebook post. It may be in every WhatsApp image. So in this way, it may survive.
Next question from Vikas Datta, Pachim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya. He asks, can you feel that using Assamese folk songs with modern instruments have a positive impact on our culture? Sir.
The use of modern instruments with folk songs.
Yes, using Assamese folk songs with modern instruments have a positive impact on our culture.
Okay,
Is it correct?
okay, I get it. Well, there has been always a trend for absorbing by these folk performing arts or folk music, whatever you call. Folklore is a great absorbent. It absorbs anything and everything. In the past, we had these Bihu songs which were sung in Assamese, but at one time, we don't know when, English words were absorbed into the Bihu songs. And now, when we talk of a pure or a traditional Bihu song, we never hesitate to sing that song with English words. Ukiai no ukiai, railgari kon choli jai, stationer mukholoi sai is a traditional Bihu song, and that is regarded to be quite old. But we have railgari, and we have this station, the word station. So in this way, certain even foreign words are absorbed into the Bihu songs at some point of time. So in this way, it goes on absorbing anything and everything. The contemporary things are absorbed by the Bihu songs. We have hunte bahute utute bahute khaute khaute gat sabun marute mobile punor kiring kiring. So that also is a Bihu song now. People are very allergic about this type of songs now. They say that these songs are going to pollute our chaste Bihu songs. But I don't know, after 50 years, we may give it as an example of a chaste Bihu song, as we give the example of this Ukiai no Ukiai Railgari Kon Choli Jai. So in this way, the use of musical instruments. Actually, at one time, the Bihu songs were performed with only the accompaniment of the Bihu dhol, and that too in the field. And later on, when of course there were cymbals, sometimes the toka was used, sometimes hutuli was also used, but it was not a very ornate kind of performance with all the musical instruments played together, with all the girls clad in muga clothes and all the boys in Surya and Muga Sapkon. It was not like that. It was just homely affair. It was just like our enjoying our home party. There was no formality in dress and nothing. It was normally done in the fields, under a tree, at a place of recreation, under the shade. So in this way it was done. But now it has taken a formal form in the stage. So when it has come to stage, lots of formalities have cropped in, and we have accepted that. We have accepted the performance of Bihu on the stage. We have accepted the performance of Bihu um, in Republic Day parade. In Republic Day parade, the dancers go on marching in the form of dancing. So we have accepted that also. In the same way, sometimes we may accept the use of modern instruments also if it is very musically and very melodiously played, accompanied. And in fact, it has already happened in the recordings, in the recorded form of the songs. Musical instruments are used. Such modern musical instruments are used. The use of keyboard, the use of guitar, the use of other accordion and all those things have taken place. And we have not banned those Bihu songs. No banning has been done because the harmonium is accompanied or because the guitar is accompanied. Banning has not been done. And some of our, say, popular artists, they play on the stage with the accompaniment of guitar and drum and all that. So it is not banned altogether. It's a kind of a passive acceptance. We are passively accepting with a tacit taste, which will be turned into a sweet taste after hearing it time and again. I think I have not offended anybody by that.
Thank you. There are so many questions, but this is the last question because shortage of time. The last question by Mary Kalita, Pachim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya. The question is, why do you think younger generation is not so much attracted to folk music? Sir,
Yeah, not too much attracted.
why do you
Yeah,
think
okay.
young generation is not so much attracted to folk music?
Well, I don't think that they are not attracted. The younger generation is not, the first thing is not exposed, rather, not that exposed to folk music in the actual context. And the lifestyle of the younger generation, the lifestyle of most of the people now have changed a lot. And in this lifestyle, I had already answered one question earlier regarding context. We have actually lost the context. We don't have the reverence of the earthen lamp that is lighted amidst the fields in Kati Bihu, because we don't have the agricultural land and the paddy field. We are not doing the agriculture. So we don't have the reverence the sacredness of the lamb at all. But earlier they actually mattered. They were life and death question. If the crop was damaged, then it would be a great loss. But now nobody is depending on the crop, particularly the uh, people who are concerned with folk music or folklore. They are concerned. I don't say they preserve or protect or perform. They are concerned. We are concerned. We talk of folk music. We preserve folk. We talk of preserving folk music. We talk of uh, say maintaining the chastity of folk music. But we are not the tradition bearers. We are not the bearers of the tradition. So we don't do it actually. The ones who do it, they are in it and they have been doing it and it is continuing. But only in case of the people, um I won't say the city dwellers, the elite section of the people everywhere who are no longer dependent on agriculture, who are not no longer dependent upon the old days lifestyle, they actually are not attracted as they should have been had they lived in that culture. Now we are not living in that culture. Though we say that we are very culture conscious, we are not living in that culture in the sense that we are already shifted from the profession. We are already shifted from the occupation. Now it was purely and things were purely agri based. Agrarian culture was there. Now we are not agrarians. We are totally salary based people, salary dependent people. So we are not the tradition bearers. The tradition bearers are doing that, but there also lots of changes have taken place and lots of uh, negligence has been shown. That I agree because of the uh, basically the creation of the media, the media in the sense that people are exposed, people have the access to media, be it the social media or the electronic media or the radio or the gramophone or whatever it may be, people have access to it. And as a result of that, they actually they have a repertoire of these things which they hear. They don't hear much of folk songs, they don't hear much of folk tunes, but they hear more of Hindi songs, they hear more of English tunes. So this has entered their existence, their psyche. They preserve these things, and when they have to hum in the bathroom, they will hum a Hindi song tune rather than a Bihu song tune. So it is quite natural. But in spite of that, things will uh, continue to be. Our tradition bearers will uh, carry them ahead, and they will not die, but they may transform, they may be changed, they may get a new form, they may acquire a new garb, but it will definitely be there and it will continue, because people are now more concerned with the roots, with the identity. Even the Americans are now concerned with their roots, and they have started talking of their original homeland and their culture, which at one time they had given up, uh, following the American dream. That was the common American dream for all, and they cared very little for their past and their ancestry and their heritage. The American was the identity, and dream was the American dream. But now they have gone back to their roots, and we are in a better position than the Americans. We don't have to search our roots; it is very near us, and we have only to reach it. And therefore, because of this awareness, it will be there. It will continue. I'm not pessimistic. I'm very optimistic about it.
Thank you, sir, for your very informative and analytical answer against each question asked by the participants. Thank you so much. Now, over to Dr. Prabalika Sarma for next program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sir has explained the question so beautifully, and you have also conducted the session very nicely. Thank you, Gagan Bora. Now, the most important part of this webinar, that is the vote of thanks. This vote of thanks will be today delivered by Associate Professor Monisha Sarmah, Head of the Department of Education. Over to you, Monisha Baido.
Am I audible, Prabalika?
Yes.
Respected research person, Dr. Dilip Kumar Kalita, sir, Professor and Director, Anandaram Barua Institute of Language, Art and Culture, ABILAC, folklorist and musician, Dr. Rana Sarma, sir, Principal, Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya, esteemed participants in today's national webinar on folk music of Assam, and ladies and gentlemen. As all good things come to an end, so is today's webinar, and we have reached the concluding stages. Now, I, Monisha Sarma, member, on behalf of the Cultural Development Committee, Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya, am privileged to offer the formal vote of thanks. We must admit that organizing this national webinar has been a very enriching and exciting journey for all of us. First of all, we would like to offer our sincere thanks and gratitude to the resource person, Dr. Dilip Kumar Kalita, sir, Professor and Director, Anandaram Barua Institute of Language, Art and Culture, ABILAC. We are grateful to you, sir, for accepting our invitation and sparing your valuable time for the webinar, in spite of your busy schedule. We thank you for enlightening us with different aspects of folk music of Assam in your deliberations. Thank you so much, sir. We take this opportunity to thank Dr. Rana Sarma, sir, Principal, Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya, for giving consent for organizing this webinar and inaugurating the same. Without your directions and constant guidance, it would not have been possible to organize the webinar. Thank you very much, sir. On this note, we would like to offer our sincere thanks to all the esteemed participants in today's webinar for their presence and active participation. This has encouraged and has been a source of great inspiration and motivation for all of us. We thank Sri Vikas Datta for providing active and dedicated support and technical assistance in organizing the webinar. Thank you so much, Mr. Vikas. We take this opportunity to thank all the students of Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya for their active support in organizing the webinar. Special thanks are also offered to Ms. Krishna Das, bass singer of our college, and budding talent Ms. Irene Ahmed for their performance today. We thank members of Paschim Guwahati Mahavidyalaya family and also thank our team members, namely Dr. Bijoylakshmi Das, COnvener, Professor Parul Boissa, Vice Principal and Chairperson, Dr. Gaganjyoti Bora, Dr. Arshana Bora, members, and the moderator, Dr. Prabalika Sarma, for their wholehearted efforts to make the webinar a success. Finally, we thank all of you once again. Thank you.
And I thank you, Monisha Baido, for delivering the vote of thanks so beautifully.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was very nice.
Thank you, Prabalika.
Thank you.
Thank you, our research person, Dr. Dilip Kumar Kalita sir. Thank you, Principal sir.
Feedback link to bado chat box ase.
Yeah. Oh.
Feedback link.
The feedback link is in the chat box. You have to fill it up.
Fill up koile mail joge apunaloke certificate kon pai jabo. Aru 5 minute pisot ami check koriba paro.
So you've heard about the thing, na? Feedback link. So my feedback link to katha gon paise no? Chat box ot ase, fill it up.
Ma'am, more tat hua nai.
Tumara raha nai?
Hoy ma'am, aha nai.
Okay. Moi tumi heri kori aso roba. Because heri kunise.
Chat box ot ase apunaloke
Chat box ot swa. Ha.
Ma'am, set box ot saiso ma'am, feedback from not ahiso. Email to likhi ma'am, tar tolor pura nahe dekhun.
Ahibo. Olop deri ke.
Ahibo olop deri roba. Thakibo olop deri link to.
Email to khudbaka diba jate certificate kon tomar mail ot gusi jay. Thik ase?
Dekhisu.
যি হোক আজি আমাৰ ছাৰৰ লেকচাৰটো খুব ভাল লাগিল।
ছাৰ
আমি খসাকে বহুত মানে অনুপ্ৰাণিত হৈছো, ভাল লাগিছে, নিশ্চয় আটায়ে ভাল পাইছে।
ছাৰৰ মিউজিকৰ বিষয়ে নলেজ
ভাইলিন ভালকে আমি পিছত এদিন শুনিব লাগিব। আমিতো শুনিছোৱে বাৰু, আটাইকে শুনাম সুবিধা হলে।